This is Chicago's Bloomingdale Trail, also known as the 606. It's an extremely popular 2.7-mile pedestrian and bike trail, and it occupies a repurposed elevated structure formerly used for freight trains. There have been various proposals to lengthen the trail, and in 2026, construction is slated to begin on a short but critical extension, which will pave the way for future connections eastward. Let's take a closer look at the 606 Trail and its proposed extension. Chicago is the historic center of the nation's rail network, and tracks have crisscrossed the city since 1848. The Chicago and Pacific Railway laid tracks down Bloomingdale Avenue in the late 1800s as a means to deliver freight to adjacent factories, and by 1913, the railroad built a dedicated right-of-way via an elevated embankment structure. The corridor was well used throughout the 20th century. However, deindustrialization would slowly reduce traffic on the line to a trickle, and by the 90s, all freight traffic on the line had been rerouted, and the structure fell into abandonment. Community groups began to push for a repurposing of the structure, and after years of activism and planning, the Bloomingdale Trail, now commonly known as the 606, opened in 2013. The trail stretched along the Bloomingdale Avenue freight corridor, from Ashland Avenue on the east end to Ridgeway Avenue at its western terminus. It utilizes the old rail infrastructure while adding on new amenities like a paved bike and walking trail, planted areas, benches, lighting, and signage. And the trail was instantly popular. Not only did it serve as a useful transportation corridor for pedestrians and cyclists, it was also well used by walkers and joggers, and it provided all visitors with a quiet and green escape, and a new perspective on the city below. Almost immediately, the 606 had become a beloved Chicago fixture, and it wasn't long until people began to dream of an extension to the trail eastward. But the constraints immediately east of the trail are tricky. The trail ends at Walsh Park, and its path east is immediately interrupted by Ashland Avenue, the Kennedy Expressway, and the Metra UP North tracks, not to mention the north branch of the Chicago River. It's a spaghetti bowl of infrastructure and natural features, and it presents a significant engineering challenge. But it's these very obstacles that make the need for a connection all the more dire. The Kennedy Overpass and the Metra tracks force pedestrians and cyclists into dark, loud, and narrow underpasses just to get through. It's an area dominated by fast-moving cars, and it's a maze to navigate. A walk or bike ride through this area is unpleasant and dangerous, and yet it's a critical connection between the neighborhoods of Bucktown and Lincoln Park. The 606 extension aims to alleviate this by providing a safe and direct route through these obstacles. It will begin at the current Walsh Park terminus and extend east to Elston Avenue. First, it will cross Ashland via a new bridge, built on the embankment of the old rail infrastructure. Then, the trail will extend under the Kennedy Expressway, easily fitting under the massive 40-foot-high overpass structure. Next, the extension will need to bypass the Metra tracks. This is the most challenging portion of the design. Some options were studied that proposed going over the tracks, and one even proposed going over the Kennedy as well. But the amount of ramp required that would clear the tracks would be impractical and borderline ridiculous. In the end, it was decided that the trail would go under the tracks. Still, this option requires a 21-foot change in grade in order to completely clear the tracks above. And it must do this while maintaining a 5% max slope that's ADA compliant and comfortable for cyclists, wheelchairs, and strollers. The design will utilize a switchback ramp in the area below the expressway to accomplish this. Finally, once under the Metra tracks, the trail will then extend over Elston Avenue via an existing bridge that was part of the historic Bloomingdale line. This is the end of the planned extension, and from here, nothing else is set in stone. However, previously, plans for bridging the trail across the Chicago River were proposed. It was to be built and funded by the developer Sterling Bay as part of the massive Lincoln Yards mega development, leading the trail right into the heart of the development. Yet the Lincoln Yards project is stalled, and so the fate of the 606 river crossing is up in the air. Still, this small extension to Elston will have a huge impact. For one, it will thread the needle through one of the most challenging and car-oriented portions of the city. But ultimately, and perhaps more importantly, it will set up the 606 with exciting future potential. To cross the river and connect to an extensive and expanding Riverwalk network. Conceptual maps show the eventual and exciting possibility of an entire network of Riverwalk traversing the North Branch shorelines. The 606 extension will reportedly start construction in 2026, with completion set for 2027. It's a small but important step forward, and it represents a larger hope toward a safer, greener, and better connected Chicago.